There exists in the world a strange section of the ocean, small yet sinister. It does not appear on any official map. No one can name its exact size or boundaries. And yet everyone has heard at least one story about it. This place, shrouded in mystery, is the legendary Bermuda Triangle. It is spoken of as a true trap for ships and airplanes. Over the long centuries, dozens of mysterious stories and mystical rumors have stuck to it. Some imagine it as a vortex into the abyss, others as a portal to other worlds. In the eyes of people, this is not just a section of the ocean, but the deadliest, most treacherous, and unpredictable corner of the planet. But here is the paradox. How did it happen that an area that does not even officially exist suddenly became so famous and frightening? Why has an invisible triangle without exact coordinates become overgrown with myths, books, films, and entire conspiracy theories? They say that the waters of this mysterious region have for centuries been saturated with wrecks of ships and tales of disappearances. Not only ships vanished here, but also airplanes, and along with them, hundreds of human lives. Each new incident added fuel to the fire. Books appeared, sensational articles, documentary films. Scientists and adventurers tried to explain the inexplicable, while mystics saw here the hand of otherworldly forces. And the question still haunts us to this day: how is this possible? How could 20 airplanes, 50 ships, and hundreds of people simply dissolve? Is this a chain of coincidences? Or is something frightening and still incomprehensible hidden in the depths of the ocean? You are on the Top Facts channel, and today we are going together on the most dangerous journey into the heart of the cursed Devil's Triangle. Step by step, we will return to the past and see where this story began. We will learn who first noticed strange phenomena in this region. We will recall the most sensational disappearances and tragedies. We will analyze dozens of theories, from Atlantis and sudden magnetic anomalies to giant waves and poisonous gases rising from the bottom of the ocean. And then we will try to get to the essence and understand. Where do myths end and where does truth begin? Can the unexplained still receive an explanation? We are used to thinking of this place as almost an X zone on the map of the world. But the truth is much more interesting. Here, there is science, history, and real human drama. Where is the Bermuda Triangle located? Interestingly, on official maps, you will not find even a mark with the inscription Bermuda Triangle. The United States, next to which this mysterious section of the ocean is located, does not officially recognize its existence as a separate region at all. But if there are no exact boundaries, then where is it? Unofficially, the Bermuda Triangle is part of the Atlantic Ocean, enclosed between 3 points: the southeastern coast of the United States, the island of Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. 3 lines connect, forming roughly a triangle. But here lies the catch. No one has ever determined exact coordinates. With different authors and researchers, the lines shift, and each draws the triangle in his own way. Therefore, its area is called very differently, from 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles. Feel the difference. Almost 1 million square miles of margin. As a result, this so-called triangle can be isosceles, scalene, and sometimes even more like a rhombus if the boundaries are shifted. Admit it, the name Bermuda dodecahedron would hardly have become as popular as triangle. And it is precisely here that we come to an important point. Since the boundaries float and the numbers differ, then any exact calculations of victims and disappearance become doubtful. Some researchers include certain tragedies, others exclude them, and total confusion results. But no matter how we draw the map, interest in this place has always been fueled by the stories that occurred within these conditional lines. And the first oddities began to be recorded half a millennium ago. Columbus and the first anomalies. Let us return to the year 1492. Christopher Columbus sets out from Spain with 3 ships in search of a western route to Asia. This journey lasted long 10 weeks, and it was precisely this that opened the New World to Europe. To reach the Bahamas, where Columbus went ashore and named the island San Salvador, he had to pass through the Sargasso Sea, and that means he became the first known person to cross the waters of the future Bermuda Triangle and return home to tell what he had seen. And here is what is curious. It was precisely in his diaries that the first hints of anomalies appeared. In the autumn of 1492, Columbus noticed that the compass showed strange deviations. At night, the needle deflected to the west. In the morning, it shifted again to the east. For people of that time, whose navigation relied on compasses, such fluctuations were almost mystical. A few days later, he described that the sea began to rise in extraordinary swells, and also a mysterious light on the horizon. He compared it to the flame of a candle, small, flickering, seemingly blinking. For a moment it seemed to him that it was a signal from land, but there could be no land there. Imagine how this was perceived 500 years ago, when most of the world still remained unknown. No wonder that these records gave rise to the first legends of the Atlantic's strangeness. After all, if Columbus himself saw something incomprehensible here, then this place was truly special. The wreck of Sea Venture and the Cursed Islands. Let us move to the beginning of the 17th century. England desperately tried to strengthen its colonies in the New World. In the year 1609, an expedition of 9 ships left London to deliver supplies and people to Jamestown, the first English colony in America. On the way, they were caught by a powerful storm. One of the ships, the Sea Venture, found itself in the very epicenter of the elements. The wind tore the sails, the waves rose like walls, and soon the vessel began to fall apart before their eyes. The ship was carried to the shores of the uninhabited islands of Bermuda, where it finally broke apart on the reefs. The crew was lucky. Almost all survived and found themselves on land. But imagine how this was perceived at that time. The islands were deserted, wild, surrounded by reefs and constant storms. For sailors of that time, this seemed like a sign from above, a land that does not accept people. And although there was nothing mystical in the wreck, it was only a storm. The legend had already begun to form. The Englishmen, who were saved on Bermuda, remembered it as a place cursed and deceitful. Shakespeare and the myth of the furious seas, the story of the Sea Venture, spread across England. It was discussed in taverns, described in pamphlets and rumors reached Shakespeare himself. Inspired by the stories of the storm and the shipwreck, he wrote the play The Tempest. In it, the islands are described as enchanted, and Bermuda is mentioned as Bermudes, a place that among the people was considered troubled or even cursed. Thus, it was precisely this wreck that made Bermuda a symbol of mysticism and danger. And perhaps it was then that the image of a place better not to reach first arose. The legend of the ghost ship, Ellen Austen. But the truly eerie stories began to appear later. For example, the legend of the ship Ellen Austen at the end of the 19th century. The year was 1881. The merchant vessel Ellen Austen was sailing from Liverpool to New York. In the area of the Sargasso Sea, the crew noticed a mysterious sailing ship. It looked quite intact, but on board, there was not a single soul. The cargo, however, was untouched, as if the ship had been abandoned at sea on purpose, like bait. The captain of Ellen Austen decided it would be a sin to let such a find slip away, He sent part of his crew onto the orphaned ship to lead it to New York. And now imagine, two ships are sailing side by side, the ocean is calm, when suddenly a strong storm strikes. The waves and fog separate them from each other. When the storm subsides and the captain sees the other ship again, he calls his men. But in response, there is silence. On board, there is once again no one. And what does the captain do? He sends a second crew. For several days, the two ships once again sail side by side, but then a thick fog descends. When it disperses, the ghost ship is gone. No men, no cargo. It vanished forever. The story sounds like the script of a horror film, does it not? But the most intriguing part is that some documents say the voyage of Ellen Austen in 1881 passed without incident. In Lloyd's records, there are no mentions of catastrophes, and yet the legend lives because it is too beautiful to be forgotten. The disappearance of USS Cyclops, March of 1918. The First World War was not yet over, but the United States was already supplying its factories and army in full. In Rio de Janeiro stood the giant transport ship USS Cyclops. Its dimensions were staggering, a length of more than 160 meters, on board over 300 men and 10,000 tons of manganese ore, an important raw material for steel production. After a short stop in Barbados, the Cyclops set sail and vanished without a trace. No SOS signals, no wreckage, not a single clue. For the United States Navy, this became the greatest non-combat loss in history. President Woodrow Wilson uttered a phrase that went down in history. Only God and the sea know what happened to this great ship. And as if this were not enough, a couple of decades later in the same waters, two more ships, the sisters of Cyclops, also disappeared. This no longer looked like coincidence, but like a chain of nightmarish events. One magazine of that time even wrote, "The ship disappeared as if it had been seized by some unknown sea monster and dragged into the depths together with the men." Imagine this image for sailors of that time. How could one not believe that darkness lurks in the Atlantic? The tragedy of Flight 19. But the real fame of the Bermuda Triangle came later, in 1945. On the 5th of December, 5 Avenger bombers took off from the naval base Fort Lauderdale in Florida. It was a routine training mission, a flight over the ocean with practice bombings. On board were 14 cadets and their commander, experienced pilot Charles Taylor. And everything went fine until problems with navigation began. Soon, Taylor transmitted by radio, "We cannot determine where we are." His compasses, according to him, had failed. After 20 minutes, he unexpectedly passed command to another pilot, and soon his last phrase over the radio sounded like a prophecy. "It seems we are entering white water. We are completely lost." All 5 planes continued flying until they ran out of fuel. Their remains were never found. But that was not all. A rescue seaplane with 13 crew members was sent in search of Flight 19. And guess what? It also disappeared. A flash was seen in the sky, but no wreckage was ever found in that case either. The result? 27 dead. Newspapers screamed of the ocean's vengeance, and the naval report ended with the phrase, "They seem to have flown to Mars." After these events, the whole world began to talk about the cursed triangle. For if the ocean can swallow both ships and airplanes, and without leaving a trace, then something here is clearly wrong. Disappearances of passenger airplanes. After the Second World War, tragedies in this region did not cease. It seemed as if the ocean demanded new victims. December of 1948. A British passenger airliner with 36 people on board was making a flight from the Azores to Bermuda. The plane simply never arrived. Communication was lost, no distress signals, no traces. The people seemed to dissolve into thin air. Barely a year passed. January of 1949. Another airplane of the same airline, BSAA Star Aerial, disappeared on the route from Bermuda to Jamaica. It was the same type of airliner that had vanished the year before. No wreckage, no explanations. Such cases struck the imagination of the public. After all, it is one thing: military planes, training, risk. But civilian passenger flights, this looked like a direct attack of mysterious forces. The birth of the Devil's Triangle. By this time, so many stories had accumulated that it was necessary to give a name to this whole chain of tragedies. In February of 1964, the American journalist Vincent Gaddis published an article in the magazine Argosy. It was he who first connected the points: Florida, Bermuda, Puerto Rico. 3 lines, and inside them supposedly occurred all the most mysterious disappearances. Gaddis named this zone the Bermuda Triangle, and he added, "The greatest number of disappearances falls precisely on this section." The world seemed to explode. People love stories of serial killers, cursed places, mysteries that defy explanation. And here, a whole triangle of death in the middle of the ocean. The 1960s were the era of the Cold War. Spies, rumors about secret technologies and extraterrestrial civilizations. Conspiracy theories literally filled the air, and Gaddis's article came just at the right time. The boom of books and the golden age of the myth. 10 years later, riding this wave, the book by Charles Berlitz. The Bermuda Triangle was published, and here began true hysteria. The book sold more than 20 million copies and was translated into 36 languages. Berlitz put forward theories that captured the imagination. In his opinion, the disappearances were connected with the legendary Atlantis, whose energy crystals are still hidden at the bottom of the ocean. Or with aliens who abduct ships and people. Or with a portal to another dimension. Yes, all of this sounded like science fiction, and that is exactly why it sold in millions. People loved the feeling that next to the familiar world, there exists something secret and inexplicable. Berlitz's book had such an influence that even Steven Spielberg, when making his film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, included Flight 19, showing its pilots as victims of alien abduction. Theories, from Atlantis to aliens. After the release of Charles Berlitz's book, The Bermuda Triangle, people's imagination broke loose. No idea seemed too wild. Some said, under the water lie the ruins of Atlantis, and it is precisely its ancient technologies that draw ships and airplanes into the abyss. Others claimed, in the ocean works a portal tearing space and time. Still others insisted, this place is a base of extraterrestrials who abduct humans for experiments. And there were also stories that ships and airplanes did not even have time to send out distress signals. That means something instantaneous and supernatural was happening. Admit it. It sounds like the script of a blockbuster, and the public devoured it eagerly. In the era of the Cold War, when talks of UFOs and secret experiments filled the newspapers, the Bermuda Triangle became the ideal X-zone for millions of fantasies. Magnetic anomalies and broken courses. But, as always, science did not stand aside. Scientists began searching for real reasons, and the first explanation was magnetic malfunctions. Supporters of this theory reminded that in the region of the Bermuda Triangle once passed the so-called agonic line, a place where the compass needle points not to magnetic north, but directly to true north. It does not sound frightening, but for pilots and captains of past centuries, this could become a fatal trap. The smallest error, and the ship goes in the wrong direction. And in the ocean, even a few degrees of deviation can cost hundreds of kilometers of route. Columbus, as early as 1492, complained in his diaries that the compass behaved strangely. And in the 20th century, the same problems were recorded by pilots. Let us recall that same Flight 19. The commander was sure that he was flying over Florida, while in reality, he was over the Bahamas. But here is the nuance. The truth is that the agonic line does not stand still. It moves. In the 18th century, astronomer Edmund Halley first noticed its shift and introduced maps of magnetic deviations. Today, this line has long since moved into the Gulf of Mexico. That means compasses in the Bermuda Triangle behave no more strangely than anywhere else, for example in Norway or Siberia. So the theory of the compass malfunction is beautiful, but not universal. Yes, navigation errors existed, but to attribute all tragedies to them is clearly an exaggeration, especially since thousands of ships pass through these waters, and the overwhelming majority reach their destination without any problems. Storms and hurricanes. The natural enemy. Let us begin with the most obvious. The Atlantic in the area of the Bermuda Triangle is a true arena for hurricanes. Every season, powerful tropical cyclones strike here. Remember even the recent years. Satellite images show how storms literally sweep away everything in their path. And now, imagine that centuries ago, captains had neither satellites nor forecasts. Ships found themselves in the epicenter of hurricanes blindly. It is no wonder that many vessels simply disappeared, leaving behind only fragments of legends. After all, the ocean knows how to cover its tracks better than any criminal. Killer waves, myth or reality? For a long time, sailors told tales of walls of water as tall as 10-story buildings. Scientists smiled skeptically, until 1995, when the first such wave was recorded by instruments in the North Sea. It was named the Dropner wave. Its height, 26 meters. Think about it. That is like a 9-story building suddenly rising in the middle of the ocean. Today, we know that such waves do indeed exist. The probability is about 1 in 10,000, but for a ship caught under such a monster, the chances are practically zero. If at least part of the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle is connected with killer waves, everything becomes much more logical. The Gulf Stream, a hidden killer. There is another force that makes these waters treacherous. The Gulf Stream Current. It flows along the western edge of the triangle and moves at a furious speed, up to 5 knots, that is, hundreds of times faster than the Amazon River. For an inexperienced captain, this is a catastrophe. One miscalculation, and the ship is carried hundreds of kilometers off course. And if at the same time a storm or wreck occurs, the debris could simply disappear, swept away by the powerful current. Against this background, it becomes clearer why wreckage was so rarely found. The Gulf Stream erased everything mercilessly and quickly. Methane, the gas traps of the ocean. And now, a more exotic theory. In 2016, Norwegian scientists discovered on the seabed huge craters, up to 1 kilometer wide. Their origin is connected with methane eruptions. Under layers of sediments, gas accumulates and then bursts out in giant bubbles. Imagine, a huge bubble of death rises, and if at that moment a ship is passing over it, the density of the water suddenly decreases. The vessel literally sinks down, as into a funnel. This version instantly took root in the media. Supposedly, here it is, the explanation for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. But the scientists themselves immediately clarified. Guys, we are not saying that this is connected with the Bermuda. But journalists no longer cared. The theory became part of the popular myth. And here arises the main question. If everything can be explained by hurricanes, currents, waves, and methane, is there in the triangle anything unusual at all? Numbers against the myth. And here begins the most interesting part. For the myth of the Bermuda Triangle rests on rumors, stories, and legends. But what do the real data show? Scientists analyzed over 150,000 marine incidents during the period from 1982 to 2015. As a result, in the waters of the Bermuda Triangle, there were only 361 cases. That is about 4% of the total. And do you know what? The nature of these incidents differed practically in no way from catastrophes in other parts of the planet. Moreover, in the Triangle, there were even fewer cases of ships capsizing than on average across the world. And now, the key detail. From 1982 to 2015, not a single disappearance of a ship without a trace was recorded within the Bermuda Triangle. That is, not a single case that would fuel the legend. In 2021, journalist Johnny Harris gained access to the data of Lloyd's List, a global publication about shipping. And here is what turned out. Over the entire year, through the waters of the Bermuda Triangle, passed 8,634 ships. Of these, only 2 encountered serious problems. That is about 0.02%. For comparison, on average across the world, the probability of losing a ship is about 90 times higher. That is, from the point of view of statistics, the Bermuda Triangle is one of the safest places for sea travel. And not only Lloyd's List, but also Lloyd's of London and the United States Coast Guard all say the same thing. The number of disappearances in this region is no higher than anywhere else. And what about aviation? Let us move to the sky. Here it is even more prosaic. The National Transportation Safety Board of the United States collected data on all aviation accidents since 1962. The result? The overwhelming majority of incidents in the Bermuda Triangle area happened during takeoffs and landings, that is, near airfields in the Bahamas and in Florida. As for disappearances in the air, such cases are very few, and most often the cause was bad weather or pilot error. Since 1965, attention, only one incident was recorded in the area of Bermuda. A JetBlue flight experienced severe turbulence. The result? Only one passenger injury. That is all. Flight 19, the final solution. And now let us return to the most famous tragedy, Flight 19. The official reports say, Squadron Commander Charles Taylor had a tendency to get confused in navigation. There is evidence that earlier he had already gotten lost during flights. On that day, he mistakenly decided that he was over the Florida Keys, while in fact, he was over the Bahamas. Instead of turning toward land, he led the squadron further into the ocean until the airplanes ran out of fuel. It is tragic, but it was human error, not a portal into another dimension. And here is the paradox. The more data we collect, the more obvious it becomes that the Bermuda Triangle stands out in nothing. Hurricanes and modern times. If we remove the mysticism, what remains is harsh reality. The Bermuda Triangle is located where the Atlantic is especially fierce. Just think about this. Florida is the absolute champion of the United States in terms of the number of hurricanes. Since 1851, there have been only 18 seasons when not a single storm came ashore here. Bermuda, once every 6 to 7 years, is struck by a destructive cyclone. Puerto Rico is an outright storm magnet, where every year about 4 to 5 tropical systems pass. And even in 2025, when we have satellites, radars, forecasts, and supercomputers, hurricanes continue to destroy homes, cities, and lives. And now imagine sailors of the 17th through 19th centuries who had no charts, no GPS, no warnings. Naturally, the ocean claimed its due. Why was the myth stronger than the facts? And here psychology comes into play. People love mysteries. We like to think that somewhere in the world there is a hole in reality, a portal, or a zone where the laws of physics do not work. After all, the world is becoming more and more understandable. We are mapping the ocean floor, decoding genomes, sending probes to Mars. And suddenly, a place that slips away from logic. That's fascinating. Journalists, writers, and filmmakers understood this long ago. Therefore, each story of a disappearance, whether USS Cyclops, Flight 19, or the ghost ship Ellen Austin, became overgrown with myths and artistic details. Thus, the legend was born. Take Charles Berlitz's books, 20 million copies sold. For comparison, that is more than many classic novels. Why? Because he offered people not dry statistics, but a tale. Atlantis, portals, aliens. Fantasy always sells better than dry numbers, even if in the numbers the truth is hidden. The truth about the triangle. And here is the truth. If we compare the statistics of maritime and aviation catastrophes across the world, the Bermuda Triangle does not even enter the top 10 most dangerous regions. The main risk zones today are the South China Sea, Indonesia, the Philippines, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Black Sea. There, the losses are incomparably greater. That means, from the scientific point of view, the Bermuda Triangle is a phenomenon of mass imagination, a beautiful myth that has lived for more than half a century, even though real data have long since explained everything. The finale. It turned out that behind the myth there is no mystery, but an ordinary mixture. Mistakes of pilots and captains, fierce hurricanes, unpredictable currents, and the human love of frightening stories. Yes, it does not sound as impressive as a portal to another dimension or an alien base. But precisely for that reason, the Bermuda Triangle is unique, not as a place on the map, but as a mirror of our imagination. So the next time friends ask, "Is it true that in the Bermuda Triangle ships disappear?" you can smile and answer, "No, it is no more dangerous than the road from Dover to Calais on my vacation. And there, believe me, there is much more stress." The Bermuda Triangle is not a cursed place, but a symbol of the fact that sometimes legends are far stronger than truth. And do you know what? Sometimes that is even good, for we all need stories that make our hearts beat faster, even if they are only myths. Thank you very much for watching and for staying with us until the very end. The best support from you will be any comments, likes, or dislikes, and watching our other most interesting videos, which, by the way, have already appeared on your screen. I highly recommend watching them.